ની જય સિયાવર રામચંદ્ર ભગવાનની જય ગુરુ હરિ પ્રમુખ સ્વામી મહારાજની જય. In the divine presence of Lord Swaminarayan, in the equally divine presence of my Guru Hari Puja Pramukh Swami Maharaj, most warm presence of Mukesh Bhai, and so many of my friends who are also present today. It's not only that AMA feels comfortable with speakers like us, but after a long, long time, even I feel comfortable with AMA. It's hardly that we sadhus move out, but there is something special in the way that people gather here. And maybe you call that attitude, or maybe you call that inner feelings. But something warm touches people. And I tell you, I am not the only speaker who is sharing this view. I just wanted to let you know that I admire the organizers for organizing this specially inspiring seminar. And internally, I truly thank the person who has worked out these titles. And just in the beginning, somebody told me that Mukesh Bhai himself has worked out the titles. The reason is that the wonder of attitude. Then you have magic of motivation, the power of perseverance. But if I can add that apart from these 5 days, if you add one more title, the strength of prayer, I think all would have been completed. Because all 5 things, if you want to put it in a nutshell and inspire yourself continuously, you have to start talking to yourself, and that could turn you mad. But if you don't start talking to yourself without the help of God, then you can't go ahead in the right direction. So the first thing I wanted to mention to you is the topic attitude is full of wonders. And I did not really want to start like this, but I want to start like this because of what just Mukesh Bhai mentioned. He mentioned an incident between the fight of David and Goliath. It becomes more important if any of you have ever read the story and life of Michelangelo. A beautiful book has been written on him by Irving Stone, and the name of the book is Agony and Ecstasy. If you know the character of Michelangelo, he's a sculptor. Again, it fits in with the motto that you have given. And he's a sculptor beyond expectation of a human mind. We happen to have the privilege to go to Florence, Italy, to go to Rome, and see some of the wonderful structures and sculptures that Michelangelo has created. We saw the Pieta, but the most powerful, the most beautiful, the most balanced sculptor ever been created by a human being is that of David. And there was a time in the Christian system that corpses were buried. Michelangelo was the first man who privately and secretly went against the church and dissected the corpse to understand the anatomy. After he made David a so perfectly balanced sculptor of the human being, Leonardo da Vinci, another great artist, came to Michelangelo, and you know what he said? He said, "Angelo, you have murdered art." And Michelangelo said, "But how do you think I have murdered art?" He said, "If anybody tries to make a better human anatomy, he will either over-exaggerate it or underdo it. After doing the David, nobody can do anything else to art." Imagine a person at the age of 24 succeeds in making a beautiful sculptor. But the power behind this simple boy was his attitude. And that attitude is something unimaginable. In the book, while he's learning from his guru Bertaldo, who is teaching him, sculptor, so many people come and tell him that, Angelo, why sculptor? Because sculptor and artist, they have a very miserable life. So do poets. Because they have to be happy amongst themselves. But sculptor has a miserable life because somebody told Michelangelo that you have to make a sculptor, then go around and find clients and say, please buy my sculptor, buy my sculptor, buy my sculptor. But if you do business, then clients come to you. If you do horse racing, then gamblers come to you. If you do things which are in the heart of the people, you don't have to go and beg. So one of his friends is telling Michelangelo that I have placed business first, then second horse racing, then stealing, then this, then this, then this, a list of 20 things, and he said, I place marble sculpting last. And then he turns to Michelangelo and he says, what about you? And do you know what he says? He says, I say sculpting and my list is over. Look at the attitude of a guy. He says sculpting and his list is over, there is nothing else in his mind. Only then you can produce something beautiful like that. But then again, the David he has made, I'm telling you from history because I have studied him. The David he has made, if anybody has seen it, is about 7 feet tall. Florence had been beaten by another country. It was a slave country. And once that king went away again out of Florence, there was a stone known as La Duco. Duco meaning a big stone, marble stone. That stone had a gash in the middle. So that stone wasn't complete. And the people of Florence said that if anybody can make a beautiful sculpture out of this stone which has a gash in the middle, we will place it in the square of Florence and make it as one of the best sculptors of Italy. Everybody went around that stone. To tell you the truth, even Leonardo da Vinci came. Everybody came, but nobody could think of making something beautiful out of that stone. And this is Michelangelo. He's walking. He was always shabby, poor, and Da Vinci was always in silk robes, moving around. He had 10 people around him. Angelo was alone, a lonely man. When he went to that place, he decided that he wanted to make David out of that stone. But the problem was, every sculptor, including his guru, everybody had made David, and you know the story as he just explained. The Philistine army was there, and the Jewish army was going. And that's when they said that instead of 2 armies fighting, if you have best fighter from our side was Goliath, and best fighter from your side, and nobody wanted to fight Goliath, and everybody pushed this David in the front, that you go and fight. Now think, the story comes as he has said is perfectly correct. The story goes that after David beats Goliath, listen to this, then David cuts off his head, holds his head in his hands, and cries with great cheer. This is the scene of David. Every sculptor before Michelangelo has made David, either in bronze or stone, but with the head in his hand, and crying with joy, and David, a young boy, and a massive head in his hand. This is the structure. Now see, Angelo did not have room to have 2 little statues inside that stone. Do you know what he did? He has created David. To incorporate that gash in the hole, he made David 1/2 foot up, so there is a gash in the middle which fits into the leg. He has made David with no sling bag, but just a sling and only 1 stone. He has made David that looks into the eye, up into the sky. And then when people started asking him, Michelangelo, why is your David, he does not have the head of Goliath? And Michelangelo says, after killing him, it's anticlimax. He said David actually beat Goliath The moment he decided, had an attitude that I will fight him, he had won him. So my David has an attitude. The other people's David is an anticlimax. After you beat somebody, it's an anticlimax. So my David is thinking that I will fight Goliath before the fight. I think the biggest challenge you face is always before the fight and never after. So he said, my David is deciding whether I'll fight Goliath or not. And the beautiful part he has said, that though in the real history, David had a bag of stones and he hit him stone after stone, my David is so confident that he knew that one stone is enough, so he only gave him one stone. Imagine, it is because of the attitude of the sculptor that the sculptor still remains one of the best sculptors in the world. So the wonder of attitude is, if you have an attitude inside you, you can even put that attitude in stone. So don't worry, if you have a good attitude, you can breathe it into your family. If you have a good attitude, you can breathe it into your business. You can breathe it into everything around you. But the first fact is you need to have a very good positive attitude. Now the greatest thing I wonder about attitude is that the description of attitude is very simple, straightforward. Now listen to this, how I define it. You might not agree with you might have an attitude against it, but no problem. But I feel that we should define it like that. That attitude is how we relate, respond, and react. Relate, respond, and react to our events and environment. It's not just if you get up in the morning and start swearing at the weather. It's an attitude problem. You can't change it. Oscar Wilde says, everybody on this earth complains about the weather, but not a single guy can do any damn thing about it. Every day we start complaining in the papers with ourselves. Oscar Wilde beautifully put it. So how you respond, react, and relate to your events and environment, that is your attitude. How you face life. What is your personal outlook to everything? So it seems so simple, but the biggest complication is the application. It seems so simple, but when you start applying the secrets into your life, it becomes tenfold, multifold, a millionfold complicated. If I was to describe this in a very simple way, that somebody told me there'll be a total of 1,000 people here. But to put it another way, Mukesh bhai, there are 1,000 different attitudes here. And it makes a big, big difference. Because some people have just come just to listen. Some people have come to just feel that because Brahmavihari Swami is coming, I must show my face. Some people have come just for entertainment. Some will doubt, some will challenge. But there'll be a few who really want to change themselves. And I tell you, these lectures are only important for the few who want to change themselves. The lecture is the same. Our time is the same. But the attitude of the listener and the speaker determine what really goes on. Lord Swaminarayan gave a very beautiful example describing this part. Once he was sitting in an assembly and a dog was chasing a rabbit. And the whole of the devotees were following the dog and the rabbit, and he was neck and neck, running close. He was about to kill the rabbit, and suddenly the Lord said the rabbit will live. And it did live. Now the devotees took their eyes away from the dog and the rabbit, and they turned towards the Lord and said, but why did it live? And the Lord said, because the dog was running for food and the rabbit was running for life. Running was the same. Both were doing it neck and neck. Energy in kilojoules was the same. But the attitude of the dog was for food, and the attitude for the rabbit was life. So even here in the system, there are people who listen for entertainment, and there are people who listen for life. Those who listen for life succeed in the longer run than those who listen for entertainment. And the greater wonder is Okay, we have a million attitudes all around us. Correct. But like Mukesh Bhai said, that all our attitudes are self-programmable. Computers, you need somebody else to program, but attitudes, you have to self-program. To give you a very simple example, I don't want to move out from this hall. You know what programmable attitudes can do? A very straightforward example. All of us are sitting here. If Mukesh Bhai made a statement, very simple statement, that Brahma Vihari Swami will be speaking to us for 15 minutes. You have programmed yourself. And then if I speak for 20 minutes, everybody starts looking at their watch and they say, oh, it's too much. He's wasting our time. And oh God. But if I speak for 20 minutes, no change. But if Mukesh Bhai earlier on had said that Brahma Vihari Swami will be speaking for 20 minutes, the speaker hasn't changed, the material hasn't changed, nothing has changed. The attitude in your mind has changed and you'll say, oh, what a wonderful speaker. So don't blame me if you get bored, it is your attitude. It's very important that the attitude, we can self-program our attitude to either be happy or unhappy. It's so easy, we are constantly doing it. You can't tell me it's difficult, we do it every day. But we have to now, when we are constantly doing it, we have to do it consciously. That's the difficult part. If you want to go to sleep and you naturally go to sleep, no problem. But if you can't go to sleep and if you want to consciously go to sleep, it's a big, big problem. To do something, if you naturally do something good, it's okay. But if you have to consciously do something good, it becomes a challenge. My concept today is that we can program. But Mr. Oden has said that the problem with humanity is we rather ruin ourselves than change our attitude. A man would go to an extreme extent but fail to change his attitude. It's a real thing, huh? You must have heard of Dr. Samuel Johnson. He was a British guy. And as British people, I was in England, that's why I'm telling you, and edit this if it's a bit too far. But every British guy has to have some prejudice for somebody. You know, there was a saying that if a British guy is patting you on the back, be sure he's searching for a place to stab you. The right place should be there now. Okay? So there was a saying, and this saying was said by the French people. So they're equally friendly with the British. Okay? And I just wanted to tell you that this Dr. Samuel Johnson, he was a British guy, but he had an ingrained prejudice for Scotland. He hated Scotland. Once in the midst of his career, some reporters, some people, they planned a very simple conference and he had to go to Scotland. All his life, he had never said anything good for Scotland. That was his attitude. But once while he was forced, he kept his lips so tight. By nature, the British have tight-lipped. And this guy made sure they were sewn right to the brim. But as you know, the media are even more intelligent. So the media, while this Dr. Samuel Johnson was about to leave after the lecture, the media gathered him and said, what do you like about Scotland and this and this, this and this? He was quiet. Instead of saying, what do you like about everything, the media forced him into one question, interesting question. They asked him, what is the best thing you like about Scotland? He has to say something now. You might hate anything, but what is the best thing you like about Scotland? You know what he said? The best thing I like about Scotland is the road that leads to England. Some attitude. I just wanted to let you know that if a person, he may ruin himself, get embalmed or established as a certain person rather than change. Dr. Bernie Siegel, who has experimented with medicine, science, prayer, emotions, a lot of things, he gives two nice examples which are important here. He says, even if you know that the attitude is hurting you, we don't want to give it up. He goes to the extreme of giving an example of a Jewish patient he had, and that patient had been a victim of the Holocaust. The Germans and the SS people had hurt him, psychologically scarred him. This man, because of that pain, had been hospitalized. In the hospital, he kept on hurting himself, so Dr. Siegel went up to him and said, "You know something? You don't really have a medical problem, but you have to learn to forgive the Germans because something is happening to your heart." And this Jew, he kept on telling him, "But doctor, I can't forgive them. They did this to me, that to me, this to me, that to me." And the doctor said, "You'll have to forgive them for your own safety." And the Jew did not forgive them right till the end. And you know the shocking story? He grew a cancerous lesion on his heart. It is very rare that you get cancer of the heart. But he kept on hurting inside, that ultimately he grew a cancer of the cardiac fiber. And Siegel writes, it was true that the Germans had hurt him and hospitalized him, but it was the Jew himself who finally put in the last nail in his own coffin. It was his own attitude. Another lady, he said, I tried to save her because she had problems with her husband and she was suffering. And I told that lady that you have to forgive your husband and forget him. And that lady was very spiritual and she kept on saying, no, doctor, I can't. And suddenly the doctor said, what if God came from heaven and told you to forgive your husband? And do you know what she said? But Siegel, God might have made my husband, but he's not married to him. Making somebody is one thing, and being married to somebody is something else. This lady could not give up her attitude, and she suffered. I just wanted to reiterate one fact which I want to take you into a different direction. The fact is, how many homes have we seen fragmented because of attitude? How many businesses we have seen sink because of attitude? How many friendships we have seen broken because of attitude problems? How many nations we have seen declaring war because of attitude problems? They really don't have any enmity, but because of attitude problems, this is one of the things that it can go to a certain extreme. I want to take you one step further, that to such an extreme the world can move because of our own attitude problems. It's a small imaginary story, but the deeper you go into the story, it becomes much, much more real than reality. There was an international competition, essay competition, and the title was Our Future. In that competition, the winner of the essay, he begins the writing like this. He says that 70 years have passed. Listen to this very carefully. 70 years have passed. Nothing lives on this planet. Nothing stirs. No building stands. The Third World War has just ended. And in the distant horizon where everything is barren, there is only one tree standing. The author moves closer to that tree, and suddenly from that tree, something sways and a figure jumps out. Nothing on the planet survives or moves, and one figure jumps out from the tree. The author goes closer to that tree and looks at the figure. It's a figure of a monkey. The monkey has bent down, has clasped his hands, looking skywards and mumbling something, and the author grows closer to the monkey. And do you know why? What the monkey is saying? The monkey is looking towards the sky and praying to God and saying, "Oh God, don't ever make the mistake of making me into a man again." It might sound as a funny story, but now let's go deeper into this imaginary story. The depth of the story is, once man was respected as the crown of creation, and here they have turned him into a clown. The joke, it pokes at a very startling reality that, think about it, man has denigrated to such an extent that he has lost respect for life. You don't find any other animal abusing nature, creating pollution, or polluting the waters. You only find man which has lost respect for nature and is continuously polluting. He goes one step further and saying that man has also lost respect for other forms of life. If I really tell you, we've been to Hong Kong, we've been to China, we've been to Thailand, and I think man has begun to eat almost everything that moves. It's shocking, huh? We have lost respect for life around us, and the climax of a nuclear war is losing respect for the human species themselves. When nothing stands, we seem to have lost respect for ourselves. What a miserably negative attitude. That's what I want to tell you. All this was an imaginary story for me until I came up with facts which support it now. The story was imaginary. I could bear it. But recently, in Focus magazine, if many of you read that magazine, it's a scientific magazine. Recently in Focus magazine, there was a survey. And in that survey, great thinkers, social analysts, psychologists, and scientists, they started to think that how could our world end? What could be the future scenario of the world? And they worked out 11 different ways. I'll quickly mention them. They worked out 11 different ways how our world could end in the future. Imagine, all ways are pessimistic. There was a time by the turn of the earlier century where all predictions were utopian. They will have enough food, there are enough things, there'll be harmony, there is peace. Now I think if somebody talks about peace, he's looked at them with different looks, you know that? He says, is he really meaning peace? So you look at this, all scenarios are pessimistic, and the first thing they say, the world might end, nuclear war, number one. The second thing, they said the pollution gets too far up, it will destroy the saprophytic organisms which will destroy our food chain, and life will be wiped off through pollution. The third thing they say, because of huge eruptions and volcanic eruptions, our world might end. The fourth thing, which is common, they say the ozone layer disappears, greenhouse effect, everything heats up, floods, and the world will be inundated. The fifth, they say there could be an energy blast. If another planet passes by the Earth, the transfer of energy could destroy life on Earth. The sixth, they say, if once the sun has a big flare, you know, when you have a small fire and suddenly the fire has a flare, if once the sun has a big flare, the Earth could be singed. The seventh, they say, because we are at the equator and the North Pole and the South Pole are cold, if the Earth just shifts the equator like this, don't think about it. The Earth has to just go a bit sideways, it's all over. The eighth, they say, none of our fault, a meteor can just come around and strike us, and it's all over. The ninth, they say, there are intergalactic dust clouds. The dust cloud just happens to come in between the sun and the Earth. Heat is blocked, we are pushed into an ice age, and we die. The 10th, they say, through our experimentation with biological systems, man may produce a superbug which can eat up and disease the entire humanity, and we could die. These are the 10 I've said, but the 11th, they say, the most dangerous, which could destroy humanity before a nuclear holocaust. Before any of the other 10, all the social scientists have unanimously said the 11th scenario of the world is the problem of negative thinking. They have written that negative mental attitude is a problem with our earth and globe. And they foresee that such a negative mental attitude has crept into the world where all scenarios are pessimistic. Now ask yourself, mankind is perhaps the only species, all of us, which can imagine its extinction and do nothing about it. We are the only group on this earth which can foresee a third world war. Everybody talks about it, but nobody can do anything about it. Perhaps no species, the lions, they cannot imagine their own extinction. No species on this earth is powerful enough to wipe out the entire population. Only man, and as I talk to you, even I feel I can't do anything about it. It's a problem that has crept into our brains, this negative mental attitude. We have to come out of the shell in a different way. And unless we come out of it, there is no way we can really go out beyond it. It's very important that, nowadays, because we find suicides are very common, we have accepted it, it doesn't really bother us. Because so many things we accept it generally, it doesn't really bother us. So my biggest thing is that negative mental attitude is bad, but worse still is man takes pride in his negative mental attitude. Wars are glorified. Crimes are condoned. Corruption has become a way of life. Then don't blame the police. Look at that, the way we are moving into it, we have certified all these mental attitudes to such an extent that I want to tell you that just after a terrorist attack, as if some group has invented something nice and powerful, all terrorist groups start claiming it and patenting the attack. What a foolish attitude. You've created destruction and you want to own that you have created that destruction. Never, nobody would think of this. Forget about that. We take pride in even simple things. Nowadays, politics, and please forgive me if anybody is involved, I don't want to be any bad about it, but nowadays, even politics, people rule the country and the states by creating more chaos than order. Chaos has become a way of life, and there was an interesting story when we were back in England when studying. Some people got together, professionals like you, and they were discussing that whose profession is the oldest. And somebody, obviously the doctors, they have a big attitude. Please forgive me. But because everybody always creeps to the doctors, and they're always in a hurt position, and doctor is a healer. He's almost playing God, And they obviously always say that actually it's God that heals, and the doctor takes the fees. But I'll tell you very honestly, if your arm is broken, the orthopedic only plasters it up. For 1 month, your own body heals it up, and then you go to the orthopedic and say, sir, you did it. Actually, you did it. God heals and the doctor takes the fees. This is the normal tradition. But the doctors and the surgeons came up first in this small gathering. He said, look, we are the oldest profession in the world. Because, after Adam was born, God wanted to create Eve, and he took out the rib from Adam's body to make Eve. So obviously God needed the help of a surgeon first. So surgeons are the oldest profession. Then before the surgeon could stop, straight away, the engineer said, but wait a minute, before God made man, he made the mountains, he made the waters, he made the sun and the moon. And obviously the sun had to stand suspended in the sky without falling. He must have needed engineers. For that, keeping it up in the steady in the sky. But before the engineer could sit down, the architects came into the bound and said, but sir, who gave the designs that this is what you call a sun, and this is a tree, and this is a river, and this is a mountain? So obviously, the architects came into the picture, and the architects said, because before the designs, everything was just chaos. And that's when the politician got up. He said, but who created the chaos? Perhaps the oldest definition or the profession must be of a politician. But I wanted to tell you that I want to bring to your attention that we tend to glorify terrorism. We tend to glorify chaos. We tend to turn a blind eye. We all know pornography and drugs are bad. Everybody knows it in their heart that it is bad. But the problem is, everybody secretly enjoys it. That's why we can't stop it. I may be harsh, but this is a real fact. We all know it's bad. But inside our heart, there are feelings which advocate it in a different manner, and we can't speak out against it. Because it's good business and makes money, people justify it. So I want to tell you that all these things that affect you, me, and everybody are psychologically justified by us. That's why they continue to exist. Once I got hold of a medium and I said, why do you print so many scandals? Why do you just continually, change things, report this? He says, Swamiji, there was a time when media was reporting history. Now media reports sensationalism. That is our role. We are not historians. If he can agree to the fact, but we endorse it because we read it. The most important fact is that there is a global negative attitude, and that attitude is seeping into us. But then you might tell me that, Swami, how does that global attitude affect me as an individual? The biggest problem, that's why I want to mention this, only then you can really feel like going positive, is whether you like it or not, every global event affects you and me. Every global event. Now the scientists have found out that the El Nino, which creates a lot of global climatic changes, is a problem that starts somewhere on the shores of Japan and ends up somewhere in the shores of South America, and everybody in the middle starts suffering. Just a simple effect of balance changes everything. It's very important that we realize this, that we find naturally by breathing pollution, we are decreasing the strength of the human body. We really don't know, but it affects us. So by thinking negative thoughts in the world around us, it affects our mind very clearly. How does it affect our mind? One example will suffice to give you all the ideologies inside this. That in America, basically, if you go to America, there is a big fear of muggers. People can catch hold of you and mug you. They can show you a gun and then you can be mugged. It's a big fear. And one of the center points of this fear is Central Park. That's in New York. And it's also, everybody walks through that Central Park. I've had the pleasure, even as a sadhu I have run. There was nobody to steal nothing from me. Still, you have a body and you can get beaten up. So, suddenly your steps start going faster. So one morning, normally early in the morning, there are joggers who jog around in this park. So one morning, one jogger was jogging regularly in the park, normally because he had a circuit in this Central Park. Now the Central Park is famed for muggers and people who steal and hit and everything. So while he was jogging, he found that another man behind him was jogging and breathing heavily. He looked over his shoulder and he started jogging faster. And that man was still jogging behind him with a faster pace and the breathing good heavily. And that man thought, my God, he started running faster. Then suddenly the other man caught up with him, and while they were jogging on a narrow path, the other man just brushed past him and overtook him. The fact this guy brushed past him, this man stopped and checked for his wallet, and he was missing. The wallet was missing, so he ran behind that guy. The other man was running faster. That man ran behind him, got hold of his neck, and he said, you give me the wallet. And that man produced the wallet. This man put the wallet in his pocket, and he was so proud of himself that he fought his own battles and did not depend on the government. He said, I'm going to go home and give a big lecture to my child. When he went home, a proud father, there around his dinner table, while they were having breakfast, he said, son, I'll teach you how you should live in life. He said, I was going this, and this guy, and this. But he looked at his table, and he found out that he had actually forgotten his wallet at his home in the beginning. Suddenly he took out the other wallet and he started examining whose wallet is this. He was some Mr. Smith. And he felt so embarrassed, and then he phoned that guy and said, sir, were you there this morning in this Central Park? He said, yes. He said, were you jogging? He said, yes, at this time. He said, did you brush past me? He said, yes. He said, but I know that I chased you and I got hold of your neck because I thought that you had stolen my wallet and you were a mugger. But why did you give me your wallet? He said, I thought you were a mugger. I